Get out the insurance cards, get out the co-pays. The office is open, my friends. Brought to you by drroto.com.
Hello, everybody. It's Yola Ride. So let's get to it. Bring the pain!
What's up, everybody? It's Heat Override, and I'm ready to bring the pain for you and Dr. Roto this week. Ooh, yeah. Man, what a crazy UFC 319 we had last night. Du Plessis versus Chimaev. Let's get to it. Let's get ready to bring the pain. Ooh, yeah, on another Heat-tastic review. Man, that was crazy. All right, well, going into last night, once I saw the King Green fight drop with Fiera, and then I saw 3 more fights added, another one taken away, and then of course losing Ruziboyev. So Ruziboyev and the King Green fight were huge for me. Diego Fiera was a big part of my DFS lineup, so I had to alter that. And then I had to alter it, previously when Ruziboyev was out, because once Ruziboyev was out, his price was perfect. I mean, they had him so low. He was probably going to be around 60 to 70% owned on, the big slates, the GPP slates and things like that. So I was like, man, we're going to do this. I'm taking my boy New Sultan. Like you saw on the Fight Club of Pain, this is what we were all about. And then everything changed, right? Friday. So that's when I was like, you know what? I'm done. I'm not going to play big. I'm not going to play heavy. I'm not going to play hard. So I didn't do that. However, although I will say I did pick DDP, I would have lost that one. Having 3 favorites lose and having 3 favorites who were dominating their fights lose was wild. Now that's the thing is if you look at that then and you take a step back, now I'm 11-1 again, but I'm not 11-1. I'm 8-4 this week because of those favorites that lost. And not only that, I invested 2 of the guys, of course, as we'll get to it. 2 of the guys were on about 50-60% of my DFS lineups. So it was just one of those weeks where some upsets happened. And once those upsets happened, it altered the DFS slate. I'm happy I didn't go big. I'm happy that I didn't invest a lot of money into it. So that was a good part. Betting was another kind of ride, though. That was crazy. So let's get to it. All right. So, of course, of the added fights for the UFC, I picked Morales and Sesichenko or whatever that person's name was. So I got both those as win. I did pick Green Silva. And I picked Edison Barboza. I lost that because Klaus won. Now, I really thought that Barboza could have finished that fight a few times. And that was probably the one fight you could say that, even though he was the favorite, could have went both ways. That was a pick 'em up. So I'm fine with that. But then I get to the Chase Hooper and Alexander Hernandez fight. And I'm like, all right, look. So this was one of my biggest bet fights. I had practically of one of 3 or 4 fights, I had the most money on this fight. So even though I was able to get that sub with Morales at plus 1,600, yeah, you heard that, plus 1,600. We'll talk about that. I paid up for Chase Hooper on the FanDuel sites and DraftKings, and I paid 21 or 22, and then of course 9,300 on DraftKings. So it was a big blow to lose that. So then of course Lupi came through, Lupi Godinez. When me and Dan did a fast track of some of the fights that we wanted to talk about real quick, we both picked her as well too. And then of course, Gerald Michard, I think he's already dropped. So that's just wild. But Mikhail Ojazus, we went heavy on that. So right about now, the money that we lost for Hooper, that's where Mikhail actually made that money back. So now we're sitting pretty again. Pretty enough to be like, oh man, Kai Asakura should get this fight easily. Now there was a Tim Elliott call, so I do want to say I did see Angelo called that out. He said Tim Elliott is going to be the dog, but pick him. On top of that, when me and Dan did the run through, Dan got to Tim Elliott because he put him in his DFS lineup, and he's like, Tim Elliott's going to win. And I'm like, dude, Asakura, like, bro, even though they threw him to the wolves, and this is Dan, he goes, they're still going to win. And he goes, second round submission. And it happened. Now, I will say Asakura was practically winning that fight. That was at the end. That kind of just a big mishap happened where Asakura was controlling that fight at some points, but he was so thrown off by Tim Elliott. Tim Elliott looked like he looked like he was cracked out. He was spinning around, doing wild stuff, jumping off the cage, side kicking the cage before going in. He was just jacked up, and then slammed some more prime. And I'm sitting there like, this guy is just out of his mind right now. So we're sitting here watching all this wildness go down, and I'm like, wow, dude, are you serious? So next thing you know, he just gets that lucky pop, turns it over, boing. Asakura's out of there. Now that's the loss. Now that's three losses. That's fine going into the main card. So I picked MVP over Cannonier, but I did use Cannonier in DFS. In both DFS, he was good. He turned out well. I had Prates. You know that I'm a Fighting Nerds lover, and that I love everything and every time the Fighting Nerds come on and do Prates. I had Prates everywhere. That was my guy, definitely. So then, of course, if you watch the Fight Club of Pain, you know me and Dan, we're all about Lerone Murphy. These have levels. Pico looked insanely good. The tape that I watched on Pico, I'm like, okay, this man's going to be a problem. But somebody like Lerone Murphy can still break you down and take you out, no matter how good you are. And Murphy was kind of struggling. There was a few times he was looking like he was not getting on the better ends. But every time Pico rushed him, it was like Murphy got some kind of punch in or a kick in or a knee. He didn't, and then he just throws that elbow, boop, goes to sleep. And then of course we get the snooze fest for the main event. We all knew if Khamzat was going to actually make this happen, then Khamzat was going to wrestle him and keep him on the ground the whole time. And that's what happened. DDP had nothing for it. The fact that DDP even didn't submit when he was in that cross at the beginning, like when he was like that at the beginning of that fight, the fact he was held on, getting punched and punched and punched, nibble punched and nibble punched, the whole fight was insane. And DDP tried to really keep it up, but the thing is once he just got in, it's what happened. And both me and Dan did pick DDP. And that doesn't mean that we didn't think that Khamzat couldn't win. We were just like, okay, where do you go? But I did see things come out that Khamzat said he would like to fight in October. Whether that happens or not, that's a little soon, in my opinion. So I don't think that's going to happen. But this division is definitely going to shape up. Khamzat probably is most likely. I just feel like they're going to stick him with RDR real fast. But honestly, I think like Coelho Bralo, Imamov, all those guys are going to get a shot. So I think that they can wait with him right now. But it sucks because it's like now you got to shift focuses. And this is an exciting division. And really, Dricus takes no damage from this fight. Really just pride. They couldn't really, how strong he is and how quirky he was. And this was a thing we brought up when we said that there is opportunity to sub on the Chimaev side because, Chimaev on his side, because he was the way that DDP rolls and does those weird things, and you've seen it. And once, it was just the way Khamzat was able to control him with the leg kicks and kicking his leg out underneath him to constantly making it what was a boring fight, but makes the UFC different. Look, if you can't get up, then you can't get up, and that's just the end of it. And you lose to that guy, and you may lose to those types of wrestlers. You might get your heads busted in fighting somebody that ground and pounds you, that wrestles you, that can make that. You just get that. Sometimes you have somebody's number yourself, and sometimes somebody has your number. And unfortunately, Khamzat and a lot of people knew he was going to do it. Look, DDP is still going to be a great fighter going forward. He's always going to have that crazy style. He's going to probably lick his chin up, probably get in with somebody real soon after this. Hopefully, I mean, I'm not going to see. At this point, you could see, I think DDP is going to fight sooner, but you could see him waiting for another Sean Strickland fight where kind of Sean comes back from suspension and then you get the DDP fight. So that was kind of cool. 8-4 overall, like I said, 3-1 for the main card. Dan went 2-2. No disrespect. We got it. We take some things. Elliott getting the plus 2,000 on that submission was amazing. And that's what really helps. So the Elliott And then that was a hedge. That was a hedge because I had Asakura everywhere. So you could see kind of like as DFS was starting to get promising now because I stacked the main card because it was the only thing I could trust. Now it was like getting to where like the money was catching up a little bit, but I was still up a little bit. So going into the main card that's where it's ended up being. So both on FanDuel, I went 2-2. My best was like 558 on FanDuel. Then I had like a 498 and a 441. And I think the 441 was right at the line. It would have been one of those 50-50s that you kind of put yourself in and go that. And then of course on DK, I went 3-1. That wasn't too bad. I had really good lineups on that one. Again, it was a Tim Elliott lineup. It was where that was where I put Khamzat in, and then I had Elliott. I saved on that. I decided to sway. That's what you do. You sway with bets, you hedge. And at the same time, you sway with DFS. That's what some people that make 150 lineups sometimes have an advantage because they get all those factors, those parables. Whereas like somebody like me or you or anybody that just puts in like 3-4 lineups is that I'm happy I kept it to a minimum. Unfortunately, I really wanted to pull money from this event, and I did. But the problem is I was only up $25. So I'm gonna be like, okay, I'm up. Cross, let's just call it for what it was. I had two favorites, one slight favorite, lose, and all my money was invested in 2 of those fights. But I was able to hedge and come back, and that's where hedging comes in. If I would have won, yes, I would have lost that hedge bet, but I would have won a lot more money. I'd have probably won like $50, $60, $70, $80 more on top of that for that, but that hedge allowed me to cover all the hedge and that. And that's where some of those big fights, and that's what's going in. Well, that's where getting the under with Murphy and having those bets with him. And we had the second round knockout with Murphy. I always do first and second round. So I was able to pull that. So even though within this confined and just not playing a lot, we were able to hit a lot of bets. So I gotta say, move on to next week. We got UFC Fight Night in Shanghai. Of course, this is gonna be where we got Johnny Walker versus Zhang Mingyang, and we know Zhang Mingyang is an assassin. You already know I'm picking Zhang. I'm picking Zhang. Walker's gonna get his lights knocked out. But we'll talk about it. We'll talk about that on the Fight Club of Pain on Thursday with Dan. We'll cover the 4 fights. Practically the top 3 fights are the ones that we're going to end up covering for that. So look at that. And hopefully there's no musical fight card because it's over in Shanghai, China. Like we don't need people missing their visas, missing their weight. Stay clear of the rice. If you're trying to cut weight, you got to do something, man. We can't have musical fight cards, man. It turned me off. I'm happy. I pulled a little money, but this is not what I want. I want more. I want more for everybody, all my pain bringers, all the subs at Dr. Roto, all of you that watch my Bring the Pain podcast, and that I respect that. I thank you so much for everything what all of you do. So that being said, you all have to get ready. So I'm recording this on Sunday. Tomorrow at Monday at 8 p.m. on the Dr. Roto Network, we go live. And we will be doing our annual staff fantasy football league. And instead of being a 12-team league this year, we're going to get 14 teams. And that means 14 extras, 13 experts. And then Tano kind of won his way into it. So, Jason Braddock's back, and he's back in it this year. Of course, Kick's in it, Danger's in it, I'm in it. Everybody's in it. We got Willie in it. We got Swami in it. We got, it's the list goes on. Just everybody. Lou's in it. Chris is in it. There's so many people. Just like I literally need the best. And yes, I work with all of them, but it's like you can't just name them all at once, right? So it's just off the top of your head. But this is going to be crazy because you're going to be watching us live. You're going to be seeing the picks go through. You're going to hear our comments, and then they're going to pop in. They're going to ask us why we went that way. You're going to get 110% from me. I'm wild and crazy. It's going to be fun. I'm going to be just getting home from karate, so I will be jacked up and fresh out the shower. So it's going to be a heck of a show, man. I'm telling you, this is what's going to happen and everything that's going forward at Dr. Roto. I'm totally excited about that, and that's what makes this better. That's what makes us all betters. And that's what makes you our rich friend. So you want to get over to Dr. Roto, use code word WIN. We just updated our auction site, or the auction draft for the cheat sheets. So now you have your 2-page cheat sheets, you have the players, and you have the auction prices that you want. So now you have that there as well too. You're getting so much information. We're dropping it left and right. I got my betting article coming up for the year. If you listen to my Bring the Pain podcast, you already know that I've already covered a few bets on some of the things. I did that on the Super Bowl or the draft show when me, Ed, and Dan did the draft show preview. And so I threw in some futures on that. Now we have more futures. So I'm going to grab some of those. I'm going to grab some of that. I'm going to throw it into an article. It'll be there at Dr. Roto. I mean, we've been able to hit these quite a few years in a row. I've hit back-to-back rookies of the years, triple. So it's just really fun time that we get to do and do this extra work for you before we get into the seasonal content, kind of, be a chameleon, go about the things. And then also the DFS content, DFS having just big winners. Let's make it even better this year. Let's consistently win, consistently get that money. And that is what we've been doing all summer long with UFC, WNBA, and the MLB, winning those tickets to get those Millionaire Maker chances for a little extra money so that we can hopefully do it. Because that's what we do at Dr. O. We got the right cure for all of your fantasy needs. Have a great day, everybody, and always remember to bring the pain.
Thanks for stopping by the office. Get your fantasy prescription by subscribing to the channel and checking out drroto.com. Until the next visit, be well and take care.